Good afternoon, Brian with Grand Roofing. In this video, we're going to talk a little bit about taking a few extra minutes to set up and get some lines and math done to have a successful install of metal. So first off, we're on a metal job. We got everything tore down, cleaned up, prepped, dried in. You can see the paper on this side. And we have a single bubble down here. I'll go through some of that throughout the video, but the point of the video we're going to focus on is where to get your first panel started. So when you get to your far opposing end down there, you're going to have successful covering of your gable metal. So briefly, we're going to go into the panel we're using. They can be different versus standing seam or maybe manufacturer. But we're going to focus specifically on the layout, doing the math to have a successful final wrap up with gable metal. So looking at your metal panels, basically from one end to the other end of a factory metal panel is 5 rib, and they are 36 inches from center rib to center rib, or from rib to rib, they're going to be 9-inch centers. Why that matters, if you're just to simply take your first rib, throw it on your gable end all the way down and run it out, when this rib or your final rib breaks at the end, it will be in an area potentially, why is it not viewing? There you go. For some reason my 1X optical lens is blurred, so we'll keep it here. You want to pay attention. So when it gets down to that other end, you don't have problems with the gable metal coming on, straddling and hitting your rib. Most of the guys over there, I've had a lot of people didn't care about the quality of install. Can't see it from my house. Oh, it looks good from the ground, all those things. We know how the industry is. It's plagued with it. So I want to share a little bit of what I know. No one told me, honestly, bosses of the past, they just screw it down, hide it behind the rib. I guess their thinking is, you know, predominant areas you pull in, you don't want to see the screw, so hide it behind the rib. There is some benefit to that, but the functionality of exposed fastener, if it is going to break down, that is the weak link. So you're penetrating the flat. This is temporary. It's actually going to be up under the top center, and I'll explain why you put it there. But when you actually do your install, we do them in the top now, because if your screw breaks down, it's going to break down and water's going to get in from here as opposed to up here. We'll talk about that later. We're going to focus on the rib layout here. So a lot of guys are tempted just to throw it on your rib, your edge panel on your gable. It's not good. What you want to do is take a few minutes, lay it out. So we got a tape measure up here, long linear tape, 100 foot, 300 foot. Typical tape measure like this is only up to 30 feet max, not gonna work. Tip on that, I shove a 16 in it for multiple purposes. I tape it there. When you're doing a measure job for whatever, you can shove it down in between a ridge cap, a shingle piece, a hip and ridge, whatever. You can run it out if you're doing a solo and it holds itself. You can also use that on the ground, measuring from the ground, stick it in the mud, and it works really good. So just a tip on that. So we get that there, we know the measure in the metal. We're gonna run it down yonder over here, and I'll show you what I've come to do over the years. As I said, if you know and you follow the channel over the years, if there's a problem, my motto is, what I've been taught is figure out a solution to it. Unfortunately, a lot of guys I've worked with over the years, they didn't do that. A lot of bosses in the past, actually I haven't had many bosses, I've had a roofing boss or two. And I just never really got any why are things done, why tips and tricks, just get it done. Get it done, get it done. That's all that I heard. So I'm gonna walk you through what I did and why I do it. I got the tape laid out. The guys beat me. This is actually my next take, second take, because my phone with the Wi-Fi, GPS, everything on, tethered hotspot, it got hot and the phone says shutting down. I was like, what the hell? So you're gonna run it out, and this is essentially what you're gonna do to measure for your material list. Get your total foot mark. In this case, it's 74 foot 7 inches. If you take 74 and you divide it by 3, that'll give you how many panels you need. And then of course you're gonna need an additional one for this cut edge out here. So if you do the math, 74 in the inches, you do the whole inch mark, you can do the math in inches and foot, whatever. In this case, we're just gonna do 74. 74 divided by 3 is going to be 24.66 roughly. So you're gonna need a 25th panel. Well, to get your rib lined up so it doesn't break in the wrong spot here, assuming where I'm hooked is where you're gonna start the panel and you measure it out, you're gonna find which foot mark divides evenly by your panel width. So to explain that with a visual, 72 is where the math works out. Take 72 divided by 3, it's gonna come out to 24. So this is a full final panel wrap up right here. The 25th panel will overhang and be cut. Well, the rib is what we're gonna try to find out next. So if that is the 24th panel, it's the 5th rib, center right there, assuming you started at the gable edge. What you're gonna do is take a tape measure, you're gonna put it there, you're gonna mark the 9-inch mark. There's a little mark there at 9. There's 2, but you can see one of them is there at the 9. And then go out again to 18. There's a mark at 18, kind of by that, I can't even see it. Where am I looking? 18, right there, 18. And then 27, you're gonna mark one out here at 27. There's another one just off to the bottom right of that cap nail, right here. So that is going to be the 4th rib of the panel. Fine and dandy. you got to cut your edge. That's great. The problem is, and you don't want to get your panels all out and find out, your gable metal coming over, it's going to smack right smack dab on that, unless your panel, your gable metals are custom bent differently. Some manufacturers have them standard sizes. You can get them custom made, but we're going to talk about that very briefly, and I'll show you a little visual of it. Let's see if I have my, damn, I need a pencil. Did I lose another pencil? My pocket here. There we go, got one. Okay, so your gable metal, at least ours, what the gable metal does is your fascia board coming down. It's typically going to have a measurement come down like this. It's going to have a 90-degree angle come over, and usually a 45 and a little turn down. It's hemmed under. This will have a 45 turn down and a little flat hemmed under part here. What that does with a 90-degree angle here, ours is actually 4 inches and 4 inches. I know you can't see it very well, but just bear with me here. From this turn down over is 4 inches. So you want your rib to break somewhere in here. If you start at your far gable where we started the video at, and your rib comes up here, that's fine. It's going to be covered. The problem is on the opposing end, this side right here is smacking right down that rib, and it's going to look like crap. Trust me, I've been with guys over the years that have done this, and I'm like, what are you thinking? Just take a few minutes. That's why we learn basic math in middle school and earlier. Just Google it really quick. It's nothing hard. You find your inch mark or your foot mark, however you want to do the math. You divide it out. You can simply shift in your head with the math before getting every panel down, realizing it looks like crap, and then pull that. Can't see it from my house because it happens. So now that we know that, let's jump back over here if I showed you. I said it yet. So we know that rib is going to break right here. If you measure the distance, you got 4 inches. So if you split the difference and you want this rib here to be out of the way of your gable metal coming over, just move it over 2 inches. It'd be simple. It'd line up, cover it really good. You do want your gable metal to straddle those ribs, and I'll explain why here in a minute. So what we got to do is essentially bring that very start of the rib over 2 inches. Let's run down there real quick. If I haven't mentioned it, if you could on the way and give it a thumbs up, it really does help. The guys love it too. A huevo. A huevo. And so right here, you can see we're actually just past. It's kind of goofy tape measurement there. They did start it just slightly over a little bit, 2 inches from the gable or from the edge of the metal. I was wanting to go from the center, but either way, it'd be hard to see your tape, your chalk line under here. I told them to measure it at 2, and then they put it on 2. Really, it should have been measured at like 1.5, so by the time that line is going to be right here. Nevertheless, it's going to work out fine. So with this being shifted over, it's going to shift every panel over, and it's going to work out to where this one will actually straddle. Down there, it'll straddle. Let's go through a couple other little tips and tricks real quick, hopefully. So as you notice, we don't have this all screwed off yet. There's a tip I've learned. Again, people just throw them down, start screwing them off. Yeah, we're rapido, we're fast, you know. Or the other guys worked with, yeah, zip them down. Bzz, bzz, bzz. It's not going to look good. So take a few minutes, get it lined up and lined out. None of my bosses told me in the past. I didn't have a lot of guys to learn from. I just learned if there's a problem, what do we need to do to correct it? So getting it lined out and everything. And something else I've come up with. Metal ribs from panel to panel lock in. They're going to straddle each other fine unless you're really boogering things up. So if you know that, what you can do is you can get a panel set up here, and they got 2 in some of these, but we got, what I do, in the center-ish top side, I'll put a screw. That'll allow me, 1, to get it all laid out. We can adjust and make corrections before it's all boogered, but typically about 3 to 4 panels is what I try to do. You can pivot them. The ribs are going to lock in. That's not going to be a problem. You know they're going to lock in parallel to each other, but they can all be shifted. So even though they're straddling each other fine, it'll give you a jagged edge of the bottom, jagged edge of the top. You want this panel here to lock down smooth and flush with this. If it doesn't, even though these are locked, if they're tweaked from each other, you'll have a jagged edge at the bottom doing that number. It's going to look bad, and at the top. So you want to try to avoid that. You want to put a few minutes, make it look good. With them tacked, you can get several locked in, and then you can tell, are they jagged? If they are, you just tweak each one. They just shift a little bit until you get it square and lined up. There's also a 3-4-5 rule I can show you here in a minute too. Once you get them, you run them out, you run your field out, then you come back and do your little detail work. Let's also talk about the 3-4-5 rule, screws and screw location, screw choice. Do screws first, since I got this one poking in my back pocket. These screws we're using today, of course, it is an exposed fastener. This one is slightly different. It's a little bit of an upgraded screw, and we'll talk about the location of it. Past videos, I've had people comment, or I've commented because they're screwed in the flats. Well, my previous bosses I've talked to, they're like, I guess their thinking is, in the predominant side you drive in, it's going to be kind of hidden from seeing it. They're hidden behind the rib. Downside is, if the screw fails, it's going to be the weakest link. You're penetrating screw holes here, not really the brightest. If you do them in the top center rib, it's going to make sure, well, not make sure, if it fails, the water's not going to be up here. The majority of the water that hits is going to run down. You will have flowing water more so in these flats than on the top center ridge. So if it does fail, you want it to be in the top. If you're worried about it failing, then I highly encourage you to look at standing seam or hidden fastener. It's going to be a little bit more money, so don't be sticker shock when you get it. But if you're worried about that, then look into those. Exposed fastener, screw choice and screw location. Screw choice. This one actually has a little metal dome cap on it. What that does, when this screws in, that little neoprene washer, that's the part that typically fails due to the sun rays, the sun UV rays, things drying it out. When that's installed and sealed and compressed a little bit, it actually hides in this little dome right here, and it protects it from the elements. The sun primarily will break that down. It also has a little bit of ferrous metal in the top part right here, so it is magnetic for your bits, so it helps hold it during install. Just make sure when you put them in the top ribs that you're going to take a minute and you set your clutch too, so you don't overdrive it and dent your top ribs in. As far as screw location, now we know we're screwing them in from the top. On the bottom edge down here, you're going to measure up a little bit so you can get an even line for your apron area. Put those in. Of course, when we're all said and done, part of the detail work, we're going to have apron installed just above the frost wall. So we get snow here, it's going to break that up or hold it, not just slide off and smash people walking in and out of cars. Then from there, not from the ice break, but from the bottom apron edge, every 3-foot mark all the way up, so 3, 6, 9, 12, so on, you're going to crack lines for your screws. The screws, I've seen guys up here just zip them off as they go. They're going to screw here, they're going to move over and screw here. They might look down this way, look that way, and kind of eyeball here. You might take a tape measure on every one, but from panel to panel it could be off. It's not going to look good. Again, when you get your panel set, you get your panels run out, you're ready to rock and roll. You measure up your marks like I just said. You go down to the far opposing side down there, mark lines down there, crack a line, tip on chalk. Some people have commented in the past, somebody just recently, that red is permanent. It's not permanent, it's just harder to wash off. It doesn't just wipe away. So know the chalk color you want to use to be less visible, because it won't wipe off real easy. But by cracking a line, then you can go through and you screw off your lines everywhere. It's going to look good. The attention to detail, it's going to make you stand out over and above the other guys. They're just, get it done, boys. I hear it. By the way, I'm looking at a hole here. We'll describe really quick what we do to actually measure for these holes here. So we got a furnace pipe coming up. We had to take pipe apart to be able to put this and get the pipe boot slid on. Just to make it easier to measure this, we're going to pull off our bottom panel length, or if you're measuring your bottom apron, we know we're hanging down 1 inch, so you're going to add 1 inch or float it 1 inch. Bring it up, measure from your bottom side to your top side, and then your panel. There's a panel lap right here, okay? So you can measure the top center or your edge, whichever you're measuring from, whether it's the top center or the edge. Just know that's where you're going to need to apply when you hook your next piece, because this is already up here. So we're measuring this panel on the top, then start measuring from the panel we're going to cut at the top. Or this panel here, if you start from the edge, start measuring from where it's going to lap at the edge. So either way you're hooking it, that sounds terrible, but if I'm hooking off top center, I need to measure top center. Coming over from this edge to this edge, transfer your marks. You can see the little pencil marks we had there. And then you can reach in and cut it, drill it, use little snips, hand snips, mechanical tools, whichever. Keep into account the slope. If you have a steeper pitch roof, you're just going to have to be a little more oblong, but that's a little tip on how we do that. And we're going to have to do it for around that minefield there too as well. Get the lines chalked, get ready to put this all down. On the actual material we've done, we've stripped everything off, got the trailer full of trash, we got everything dried in, ice and water and everything. The top is cut open for ridges. It's just dried in temporarily for the night, because this will be a 2-day job, today and tomorrow. Stripped it down today with 4 guys, dried everything in. We're gonna have majority of the panels put down. The other thing, we've got this single bubble, actually goes up higher, but the single bubble is like a bubble wrap material. It's got a foil polymer up on the top. It helps reflect a lot of the heat. It smooths the surface a little bit, so if you have a little bitty bump of something sticking up, it's going to smooth that out. The cap nails are pressed down in, so it's not going to pose a problem. And it also adds a little insulation value and dampening of noise. There may be more or less that it does, but just that's what I'm thinking it does. A little bit of R value, a little bit of noise dampening, smoothing the surface. Go get them. I'm babbling. Where are we? 14 minutes. Guys, I gotta get busy. My day consists of a lot. By the way, I get people commenting that we don't do roofs. We do roofs rather often. It's just that I've got a lot going on. I'm always on the job doing, not on the job. I'm always out doing estimates for upcoming jobs, doing a little bit of repair work. It just takes me away from being on the job. And furthermore, there's certain government agencies that don't like the fact that I came out with an invisible harness that I'd rather them not know about. So that's why I don't always show at the job site. Give it a thumbs up if you could. Hopefully you learned something, maybe benefits you, DIYer, young up and coming guy. Because as I said, the industry is plagued with world's fastest, world's best, never willing to learn. Give it a thumbs up. Until next time, be safe. I'll see you in the next video because I got to get to another town, do another estimate. Have a good one.